Good morning everybody. Today is new race car day. Now a few weeks ago I was alerted to a Facebook post from someone selling a car. I was tagged in it. Thanks Brad. And as a joke I think he said buy it, and then I went and did it. So I ended up selling one of my other cars to get this one. And it's something I said in the previous video that I've wanted to do for a very long time. I'm talking like at least 10 years or so that I've been wanting to do. So this one popped up. It's not finished, but it's much further along than the other project that I sold. So without me waffling on too much, let's get into what I bought. Afternoon. How you doing? One shitbox. This has come a long way. Dunedin. Yeah. Are you taking the other one today as well?
I haven't been told about nothing.
Okay, I'll message Jason and ask. Damn. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Here it is. It's got slicks and everything. Listen, I'm gonna need some parts. Solid. Yeah. Cleared.
I wasn't winning at all, I was just further behind. You played your hand, but showed my cards. I took my talks right from your heart. I laid them down before your eyes. Game over, blow the whistle, we're out of time.
So, as you can see from behind me, I have a 1998 Subaru Impreza STI. So, this one here, it's a race car. So, it's got, I don't know, what are these, XXR wheels? Don't know what they are. It's got racing slicks. It's got a full 6-point roll cage. As you can see, it's all been decked out, whatever else. These seats are getting sold. Don't like them, never have. Now this car is a little bit different to the others that you'll see on the road, and I know it's not the first time that this type of thing has been done before, but it's the first time I've owned one, and it's something I've wanted to do for a long time. Now, as most of you know, I am a little bit into my rotaries, so yeah, with saying that, you pretty much know where this is headed. This is in fact already decked out, ready to go for a 13B turbo engine from an FD-RX-7. So let's go have a real quick look at that. It doesn't have a motor, but it's about to change. Here's the engine bay. So it's had some work done to it. As you can see, it's got some D2 racing suspension. It's had portions of the firewall bogged in, or Bondo, what do you want to call it. It's even had the crossmember modified, so as you can see down here, it's got engine mounts, and they aren't fully welded on, but they're enough to do a dummy block, I think. Yeah, so this is where they're going to sit. So there is a bit of work needed to do in the engine bay, obviously finishing off, drilling holes, fabrication, etc, etc. But yeah, she's mostly all there. So what I'm going to do shortly, after walking through this car, I'm going to go get a dummy block and assemble it and see if I can fit it in the car. So that way I can get all of the fabrication started on it, because shortly this guy, my rotary skyline, is coming apart. Now, the plans for this car is I'm doing a wedding with it in a couple of weeks. Mike's getting married and he's asked me to bring the car along to the wedding, so I'm going to take that down. I've got to fix a few things on it between now and then. Yeah, so once it comes back from that, we're going to pull it apart, and the engine out of that is going into my FD-RX-7, and I'm hoping, which I'll measure shortly, I'm hoping that the manifold that's on the Skyline will fit into the Subaru, which means that there'll be much less fabrication and sorry, start again without the aneurysm, much less fabrication, much less time, and much less cost. Like the manifold that's on there has, it costs a lot of time to make, plus it costs almost $1,000 to have heat treated with ceramic coating and stuff. So, if we can utilize the whole manifold without modifying anything, that would be a godsend. But, this is wishful thinking. The steering column, everything's in a different position, so chances are we're going to have to modify some of it. Let's move along to the car. So, so this is a version 6. Correct me if I'm wrong, don't know my Subarus, but apparently this is a version 6 STI. It's from what I know, it could be a semi-rare version. The guards need some work. These need pumping out. The rear guards have already been pumped out, as you can see. So they pumped out a little bit there, but the fronts, nothing's been done. So I'm still tossing up what I do here, whether I just try and flare them, or whether I cut and do like a semi-wide body flare and then blend it back in, or if I have, the guard overlapping and a gap down the side. But, I'll get to that later. The car inside. Now, I don't know much about this car, but I think these are possibly RA doors, mainly because they are wind-up windows, and it's to my best of my knowledge that these only came out in RA. So not even the poverty pack, sort of like 1.6 or 1.8 litre Imprezas came out with wind-up windows. They all had electronic ones. So it makes it a little bit more rare. Steering wheel, it's got quick release. Here we go, I can get in and out nice and easy. These are similar to the Lifeline ones that we use, which I'll probably bin this setup. Oh god, see, it doesn't even go on nice. Anyway, worry about that later. It's got a STI cluster obviously. We'll get all that up and running. These bride seats, I'm pretty sure these are copies. I don't know, I'll find out. I don't really know much about these, but I don't like them, and they can go. These harnesses, they can go. Don't like those either. Otherwise, the interior is pretty stripped out. Now, underneath the car, I can't show you right now, but underneath the car, all of the suspension components, the brakes, all that stuff has been rebuilt. So it's got, the brakes, for example, they've been pulled apart, they've been repainted, resealed, etc., etc. It's got all new brake lines, all new suspension components, steering's all been, replaced and rebuilt. It's got all new bushes throughout the whole car. The guys spent some serious time and money on this thing, and that's partially why I bought it. Also because some of the hard work's already been done, which means that the project won't take as long to come to fruition. So that's pretty much it for the car. It's pretty tidy, but there are some things I need to sort out. No headlights for starters. The bumper's a little bit rough, but I can probably work with that. Obviously the brakes are in pretty good condition, new pads, new everything. I do have the paperwork to make this road legal potentially as well, so that's something else that I'll have to bear in mind. I will have to rewire the whole car because there's no wiring. So he was planning on using this for an all-out race car. So he wasn't thinking of putting it on the road or anything, whereas for me as a shop car, I prefer to have it road registered just because it's like an extra, an extra level of, showing what we can do. And it's much like getting the Mini on the road as well. Like it's that sort of thing where it validates your work to the point where it's legal. And in New Zealand, we have really, really strict rules about the safety of vehicles and modifications and stuff. So for me, or for the business, putting the vehicle on the road with these modifications is a lot more, I think, you get validated, or not validated, what am I trying to say? It's just better. Like, it shows that your work is to the standard that you can actually drive it safely on the road without anything going wrong. So anyway, without waffling on too much, I'm gonna go and get the dummy block. and I'll get that assembled, and then we'll see if we can look at putting it in the car now. It will just be crude, it's not going to be anything flash, but if I've got the components to do it, I will sit it in the car and then see how it looks, and then hopefully we can start doing some fabrication work on it soon. So let's get that underway. Alright, I've got a few pieces together for this dummy block, but the core block, as you can see here, this is an FD block. I am using RX8 housings for this dummy, mainly because I do plan to use these end plates again. These are probably going to be the end plates to be used in the car, but these are blocked off, so I can do all my fabrication work and it's not going to matter. So I'll just continue using these, that way I don't get any sort of, like, if we have to cut the manifold, there's no metal sort of sparks or whatever get inside the motor. Anyway, so I've got some dowels, these go in here, if they will. Oh, look at that. So anyway, I'm going to piece together this motor real quick, so let's go ahead and get that done. Okay, I've managed to find some bolts and gearbox, so let's see if we can make this ensemble work together. Now normally I would have a flywheel etc on here, but obviously it's a dummy block, it doesn't matter. It does have the clutch on there just because it hasn't been taken off when the gearbox was pulled out of the car, but this is a good gearbox, so I will go and probably just use this for now. I'll figure out what gearbox I want to use later, but for fabrication purposes it should be fine. So let's try and see if we can get this on. Now the only way I'm going to be able to hold this in place at the moment is with supporting this end of the gearbox with like a block of wood or something like that in the trans tunnel, just so I can get my positioning right. At that point then I can look at lifting the car up and making a cross member and stuff for the gearbox, but I also don't know if I'm going to use this gearbox, but at least it will be enough to get me having it positioned and stuff with the drive shaft and all that sort of stuff. So yeah, this keg and the gearbox is ready to go in, so I'm going to get the car set up. I'm just going to do this on the ground because I can't move this car. We've got the Caldina on the hoist and all the rear ends out of it. So yeah, I'll go get the engine crane and everything ready, and let's look at dropping it in the hole. Okay, so with some faffing around and trying to get everything in and removing parts, I've managed to get it in, but it's not where I thought it was. So now I don't know if Matt, the guy that I bought this car off, actually had the gearbox in here or not, or maybe the bell housing's different between FC and FD or whatever, but I'm not really happy with how everything's sitting. So I've got no doubt that he's had the engine mounted in this, but like I said, I'm not sure if he's actually had the gearbox mounted in this at the same time. Reason being is, I'll show you. So the engine's on quite an extreme angle. So if you look under here, oh, it's jacking away. If you look under here, you can see the back of the gearbox. So yeah, the back of the gearbox is sitting down on quite an extreme angle and it's leaking. Yeah, so basically what that means is the engine's sitting on a tilt like that, which isn't really good for a lot of reasons. So what I'm going to have to do from this point here is I think I'm going to have to cut the trans tunnel out, which is what I've had to do in the Mini and both the BMW, just to get the gearbox sitting correctly. Now the other option that I could do is maybe look at dropping the subframe, you know, like dropping it down. This car is quite low, and looking at the arms, they have, you know, they are on a bit of an angle, so I could drop the subframe down to try and counter that, which would give me some more clearance. So the big difference with rotary engines is the crank position. So in a normal piston engine, you have the crank that's really low, typically towards the bottom of the engine. So when you bolt a gearbox onto it, it sits, how do I say, you can sit the engine higher. So although the crank sits lower, you can sit the engine up higher, which gives you clearance and all that sort of stuff. So, and obviously with a boxer engine, the crank is sitting in a different orientational position than the likes of a rotary. So a rotary is basically right bang in the middle of the engine, which means when you go and put it in a different engine, which means when you go and put it in a different car, the center of the shaft, or the eccentric shaft, is actually sitting a lot higher. So the whole engine wants to sit higher, which means typically with a lot of conversions, you've got to tilt the engine back to be able to counter it, or you space everything down, or you cut big holes in things to make things fit, which is what we've had to do for the likes of the Mini. Now, I'm not really happy with how this is sitting in terms of its angle, so I'm going to have to sort something out for it. Probably the most likely thing is I cut a new trans tunnel in it and just make it able to take that. The only downer is the drive shaft will then most likely be sitting like that. So this is the diff and this is the engine. So the drive shaft will be on a bit of an angle, which is exactly what it is. It's same as in the Skyline as well. The Skyline engine isn't on a huge angle, but this is way more severe. So yeah, like I said, I have no doubt that he's had this in the car mounted, but in terms of how the engine sits, we do want to have that clearance at the back. We don't want these extreme angles of the U-joints and the drive shafts and all that sort of stuff, but also for the oil, so that doesn't sit in a funny place for the oil pickup or something like that. Like looking at it currently, the only place that we can mount the pickup is in the front of the engine, because if we go and have a quick look, there's plenty of room in the front, but the rear is taken up by subframe. So whether or not I chop some out and give it some more space, but yeah, it's looking like the front of the sump is going to be, or a front sump, should I say, is going to be the chosen method here. But as you can see, look, there's not much clearance here for the gearbox. It's sitting, literally the engine's sitting on the cross member. I've got this stropped up in here, holding the gearbox in place. So yeah, you can definitely see, yeah, there's room that needs to be moved and things changed so that everything can fit. Yeah, so I'm going to leave it there for now. I've got a lunch to go to, so I think I've achieved quite a bit for today. But yeah, I've still got a way to go. So this project isn't as simple as I originally thought it was going to be, but you know, these projects are like that. So I knew I was buying an incomplete car. You know, I think that the mounts that Matt has made, they're actually of decent quality, but I still need to rejig everything and move things around to make it all work. So with that being said, I'm going to close it off now. Hopefully we'll see you soon. I don't know how much I'm going to be getting done on this car straight away. I just wanted to see how the engine was going to sit, but hopefully I can make some time maybe to cut out the trans tunnel and extend it, or whatever it needs to happen. I'll probably get it on the hoist to have a better look, because currently doing it on the ground is just a pain in the ass. So yeah, once this Caldina is all back together, I can bump it on the hoist and just have a real look and see what we're looking at. So yeah, let's cut that off for now. Thanks for watching, and we will catch you again soon.